Hi, I'm Debbie Thompson, and this is a Stone in My Shoe podcast, where we explore how midlife can become the most true, purposeful, and fulfilling chapter yet when we choose to follow our inner wisdom. Each week, I speak with women who followed a quiet nudge, chose curiosity over convention, and created a life that feels more aligned. And today's guest is Jane Slack Smith. Jane's path has been anything but linear. She began her career as an explosives engineer, went on to become a mortgage broker and property investor, and build a reputation as a respected educator, author, and mentor, all while raising a family. Over the years, her work has been recognized with multiple industry awards, including being named Australia's Mortgage Broker of the Year twice and being recognized as one of Australia's leading property and finance voices. More recently, Jane's work has evolved again. She helps people bridge intuition and action, guiding them to create aligned wealth and clarity while collapsing time through practical AI tools she teaches and uses alongside her clients. Jane has worn many hats and moved through a variety of different worlds, bringing together logic, lived experience, and intuition. A combination that reflects what unfolds when we allow our lives to evolve rather than staying fixed in who we once were. Welcome, Jane.
Hi, Debbie.
So lovely to have you here. You're from Melbourne in Australia.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Wonderful to have you here. So, Jane, we're here to talk about the stone, the shoe. But before we do that, can you tell me where you are now, professionally, anywhere in your life, just so that the person they can see how much you've achieved, and but where you're now, and yeah, and as an intro.
Look, I think you go through different stages of your life, and there's that whole, burn it all down, renewal, and the phoenix thing. And over the last 12 months, I've really felt that I've come into my own in bringing together so many elements of everything that I've done. And where I've had a very definitive group of followers and community and clients in different spaces, it was just all too hard for me, being that not the different persona, because I always turn up as I am, but keeping in mind, who all the different groups were and what their needs were and how I could best serve them. And really last year I made the decision that, I was just going to bring it all together, and people who felt aligned to that would stick around, and those who didn't, well done and thank you for the journey and best wishes. And just doing that created so much space in my life and gave me the opportunity to just turn up. And one day I could be talking about AI evolution, and the next day I could be talking about human evolution, and the next day I could be talking about spiritual evolution. And so where I've spent a lot of time doing self-development and personal development and education and working with some of the best mentors in the world and traveling internationally to be with them, I've been able to bring together all of those things in one place.
Wow. So when you say you had different groups and you were wearing so many different hats and trying to
Mm.
serve them all, can you just tell the listener who those groups were and how you managed to bring such different groups together?
Mm. So and I'm sure we're going to get into it, but as a more, you're known for finance and numbers, commenting on, interest rate rises and what's happening to, cost of living and what's the effect on the everyday person in their home. And, having the incredible opportunity and gift to be part of people's lives in the most transitionary moments of their lives when they're buying a home or their first investment property or upgrading the home because they've had a family member addition, all of those wonderful times. So I was very much known in that space. And I got into mortgage broking because of the property education and knowledge that I wanted to impart. So when I moved into more of that teaching and in property investing and creating and curating courses and information, I then became known as a bit of a thought leader and property expert and was in, newspapers and radio and, articles and magazines regularly and cover of Money magazine, etc. And then I became known as the property person. And at that time, I felt I didn't want to be the, and here's some steak knives. So I didn't tell any of the people who are following me as a property expert that I was a mortgage broker as well. So to some degree, it wasn't until I got to the point that I merged those two groups where I been helping people who'd been taken advantage of or had gone down the wrong lending structures, and they had really been set back years. And I realized that I was doing a disservice by not telling people that I had this other service. And so that was a real learning for me. And I remember I ran a workshop with a friend. You know, we had, I don't know, 40, 50 people there, and she said, well, I'm telling everyone I'm a mortgage broker because I'm going to get clients out of this. And I was being very high and mighty, going, no, I'm going to be the pure educator. And I mean, of course, she, then got a year's worth of clients. And I was sitting there going, well, I made some money on the course. And so from a financial point of view, I was also looking at it going, not only am I disservicing my community, I'm disservicing myself and my family and what I can do with that capital to be able to have a bigger voice and bigger impact. And then when I moved into taking everything I'd learned in digital marketing from like 2011, and working with some of the thought leaders in the world in copywriting and education and the best practices in educating adults, etc., and went into the space of educating around business and using the wealth path of business as well as maintaining the property path. I didn't tell anyone in business that I also was an expert in property, which then meant, I think Australians Financial Review used to run the BIW top 100 list of the wealthiest people in Australia, and about 30 or 40% make their money in property, but most hold their money in property. So it's kind of, it was ignorant
Yeah.
of me going, oh, I don't want to be seen as trying to sell a mortgage or property course or my property expertise or mentoring. So once again, I kind of cut that off. And so, one day I might be turning up talking for a newspaper on the interest rate changes. And the next day I might be turning up and talking about how property investors, need to have a strategic plan and use my Trident strategy, etc. And the next day I was turning up and talking about, business growth. And then later, having been, a very early adopter of AI with, Jasper back in 2021 and working with numerous mentoring groups in with AI and around how to collapse time. And then working with a neuroscientist around biohacking and how to hack your mind in success traps, everything seemed to be separate.
Yeah.
And then when I realized that, look, people just want to be happy. They want to have their financial needs met. They want to have their spiritual needs met. They want to have their social needs met. They want to feel that they're living a fully expressed life. And that can come in so many different ways and different paths. It allowed me to collapse all those groups into one and just said, well, this is me and this is how I turn up.
And that's amazing. And that has taken, to bring all those different groups together to understand the essence of what makes people tick, taking the financial world, taking the spiritual world, and putting them all together. But I bet it wasn't always like this. And I'm sure that many years ago, there was a stone in your shoe, something that made you look at your life and go, this is not going in the direction that I want. So, could you take us back in time, Jane, and just talk us through that first stone, what it was? How you found it, how you saw it. Was it intuition? Was it, a very sharp stone? And what happened?
Sure. I think for me, the I'm going to call it the calling to adventure, the hero's journey is just a deep knowing that there's no other way but choosing a new path. And, I can think back to just, my early years. We grew up very modern, a farm laborer. My mum was a nurse. I guess you could say I grew up poor, but I never knew I was poor. My parents always you know, our house was always full of love and laughter. You know, we were given opportunities. Mum somehow or other made things work when, you know, we probably didn't have the money to do it. So I didn't grow up with a condition of lack or poverty or something that was driving me to a negative vision driving me away from it. But what I did grow up with was, you know, imagination and tenacity and an assumption that I could do whatever I put my mind to. And I know Mum used to come into our bedroom at the end of every night and say, you know, you're Jane Slacksmith, you can fly, and you know, you can do anything but fly, but with God's help, you could even fly. And so I just had this innate belief that I could do anything. And quite, you know, even today, I get quite shocked if something that I put my mind to, it doesn't pull off. And so I also have had a very, you know, deep awareness that my parents did make sacrifices to send my sister and myself to, you know, a good school and get, you know, great education and opportunities that we wouldn't have otherwise had. And so I felt that there was a responsibility always for everyday man and woman to, you know, assist them. If I learnt something, I wanted to teach it or share it. And, you know, I met my now husband, Todd, nearly 28 years ago. And at that time, you know, he'd said that he'd had a property investment, but he'd been inspired by someone when he was mowing this guy's lawn who had said, "Oh, you did a good job. You can come and mow my other lawns." And Todd's like, "You're 24. How do you have like a number of properties?" He said, "Ah, the first one's the hardest, but let me talk to you about it." And so Todd had gone down that kind of property investing route, and it was like, I have to buy a property, pay it off in 20 or 30 years, then
But
buy
Jane,
another one.
sorry, just to interrupt. At this stage, had you been investing in property, or you just had this innate knowledge and then you met your husband and the two
Yep.
things came together?
I had a very successful mining engineering career. I was an explosives engineer. I was, you know, had a good income. I spent a lot of it. You know, I didn't have savings methodology. 28, I was sitting in a park reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, realized that I was just wasting my money. I had to do something. I chose a new career path or new employer that was going to give me opportunities to learn new skills. And so I'd come from this kind of, you know, questioning and curiosity and learning background. And then when I met Todd and he talked about property investing, I thought, well, we could learn this too. And so a course came up. We went and course. He went and did like the accelerated course. I couldn't afford it. He'd come home every night and tell me about these things. And we just started applying the work and we started buying investment properties and we started renovating them, you know, sleeping on floor time so that we could, you know, save some money. And we very quickly, between 2001 and 2006, built up a portfolio that we're like, well, that's enough. You know, that's great. But there's all my friends and family who are still slogging away at a career. And so I taught my sister, my friends, you know, two of my friends in the last week have said we'd be able to retire by what you have taught us. And so, you know, I wanted people to have that kind of, I've got this knowledge, I need to know this too. And I got to a point, and this is the stone in the shoe for me, where I thought everyone should have this knowledge. This knowledge about how to invest in property should not be restricted to those that can afford the $1,000 courses. This should be for everyone. And I realized at that point that more than 50% of marriages break down. And there's children from these broken marriages who have a disconnection with a path that could have been. And the number one reason that marriages break down is financial stress and strain. I thought if I could solve that, solve for X being the engineer, that's going to have more parents that are sitting at the table having more communications with their children and there'll be intergenerational change. So that just became my, gosh, what can I do? And so I thought I'd teach property investing what I'd learnt. But it was so riddled with, you know, scams and people who were taking advantage, and there was no authority around, you know, this is how you do it right. The only way I could talk to people about property was become a mortgage broker. And here I
Jane,
have,
can I just stop you there for a second? Now,
yeah,
this is so interesting because so often the stone in the shoe is seen as something negative in someone's life, something that needs to change because your health or your happiness or something. But for you, it wasn't. For you, the stone in your shoe turned into magic quite quickly. It was based on curiosity and this deep knowing, from your background and what your mom said, that you could do anything. And can you just talk me through leaving, a job and doing this? Like, were you nervous? Were you fearful? What did people say, and how did you navigate that?
It was a calling. Like the stone was a calling. There was nothing I could do but this. And I was at a point where the whole management team was being moved to Singapore. We were going to be, put up in beautiful apartments. We were going to have, live-in helpers. It was going to make a life really easy. And, six-figure salary. And at that stage, I'd been speaking internationally about, some of the innovative work that I had done. I'd won a Churchill Fellowship and, designed a whole new environmental friendly rehabilitation technique using explosives. Like, I was a bit of a thought leader in that space. But this calling was so strong. I was like, I can't but do this and teach the everyday person how to do this. Like, change lives and generations by having a safe and secure family unit and having children that heard, who were developed, who weren't, running between homes or being part of conflict, etc. They had role models that were creating, effective wealth and security for their family. That could then give an opportunity for a child to have an advantage to cure cancer or a water crisis or something down the track. I saw myself as a small cog that I couldn't stop. And so when I looked at becoming a mortgage broker, I remember my mortgage broker said to me, "Oh, you'd be great. You just have to be prepared. You will not be paid for 6 months. The first loan that you write, it will take 6 months to be paid." And I
Jen,
was like,
can
"Okay,
I just stop you there, just for the person who's listening?
yeah."
And they're saying that this calling was so big you couldn't do anything but. Now, some people might not relate to that and understand what that feels like. Can you explain how that felt in your body and your mind, and how is it something that's bigger than yourself that is
Mhm.
going to impact that many people, that makes it something that you cannot but do? Would you mind just
Sure, absolutely.
talking about that a
I
bit
look,
more?
I believe we all have, free will and choice, but I have, in the last, I'd say 7 years, I've been a student of intuition and learning how to perfect that gift. The reality is, we all have it. We have this innate knowing, we have this gut feeling, we have this, you know, this is what I have to do. And so for me, I I did the research into becoming a financial planner because I thought, well, I could, teach people how to do as a financial planner. Found out you can't even talk about property as a financial planner. And so I went down this path, and a very, very dear friend of mine, I said to him, I'm going to become a mortgage broker. And he was horrified. And he said, that is worse than a second car dealership person. Like, how could you do this? You were the first female to work underground in mines in New South Wales. You've broken, so many kind of big glass ceilings for women. Your role is to be this person in this industry and set new standards. And even him saying like such, you know, cutting words, I was like, no, this has to happen. This is bigger than me. And I had absolutely no doubt. The fact that I wasn't going to be paid. And by this stage I had mortgages, obviously, and they were negatively geared mortgages, so it wasn't as if they were paying for themselves. Um, and I just, my innate knowing was this is something I just have to do. I could affect the lives of millions in generations to come.
That's amazing. And this was at the tender age of, how old were you?
So this was around 2001. So I was 31.
Wow. At 31, to have that innate knowing of who you are, but also to go against, like that guy said, what are you doing? You've got this whole career ahead of you. And to, despite that, what society expects of you, to go, no, this is my calling. And I think many people would go, perhaps I've had a little calling, but something so big and so powerful that despite everything, I'm going forward.
Mm.
That's amazing and wonderful. And look where it's brought you.
Well, it's a bit funnier than that because I'm all about hacking success. I- you can be lazy almost. I just want to have the path that's the easiest path, the path of least resistance to the vision of what I want to create. And so as an engineer, I'm, used to doing safe operating procedures, risk assessments as a mining engineer, explosives expert. And so I bought that, I guess, insight into mortgage broking. So I started thinking, well, how could I create a best practice mortgage broking business? And you can apply this to anything you want to take on. So listen up. But essentially, if I had like, let's say 30 questions and I asked 30 mortgage brokers these questions and I could distill the best practice, then I could actually start with the best business and not have to try and make mistakes. So as a property investing student, I don't even know if you can see, I've got like 120 books on property investing. I wanted to learn all of the things that people did wrong. So I jumped over those mistakes. So I wasn't prepared to learn on my dime the mistakes. I wanted to learn on someone else's dime, and I was happy to pay for that expert. And so it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. I'd get on the phone to these mortgage brokers and I'd say, oh, look, I'm new to mortgage broking. And they'd say, oh, yeah, what bank did you work for? I'm like, I didn't work for a bank because every mortgage broker had always worked for a bank. I'm an engineer. And they're like, really? And then they felt sorry for me going, you've got no idea what you're doing. I'm like, no. But I had a mentor. So my mortgage broker became my mentor. So I paid him a component for, education and assistance. And so I'd say everything down to what's the phone plan are you on? Do you pay real estate agents for leads? Who do you aggregate through? If you had to buy one piece of technology and all you had was $500 for your office, what would you buy? What was the thing that you wish you told your younger self that you missed? What was the biggest mistake you made? What was the most amazing client experience that you created? So I just went through, and by the time I got up to about question 20, they'd be going, "Wait a second, like, you're going to be in competition to me." And so
That's
I had this blueprint of best practices in the entire industry before I started, and then I went and bought a course from a mortgage broking educator from the United States because no one was doing it in Australia. And I had the scripts, I had the procedures, I had the job description for my PA for her daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual tasks 7 years before I employed her.
Wow. So, what I'm hearing is that the engineering was actually a really important step in all of this because it gave you the foundation of looking at hacks, best practice. And so that was a really important part. Otherwise, you would have come in through a bank like the others
Mm.
and perhaps not changed the face of mortgage broking. Then you had curiosity, huge curiosity, knowing that you needed to learn from people. You wanted to hack it. So you went and you found the best people from all over the world and invested in yourself.
Mhm.
Now, the third thing I'm hearing is just courage. So much tenacity and courage to go in, speak to those people, potentially get rejected, um, and bring it together. Were you at all afraid at any of those times, or was it just so much energy and curiosity, and you're creating this amazing thing that nothing seemed hard?
At that time, I joined a goals group. It was a business women's group in North Sydney. And because I was working there as an engineer at the time when I was transitioning in year 2000, 2001. And the five women all had kind of had jobs and were starting businesses. And we turn up every week. We met for 10 years weekly. And we turn up every week and they'd be like, okay, last week I said I was going to get my website, but, there was this like luncheon on. And then the next day I felt, but I was getting to my desk at 8 o'clock every morning, 5 o'clock. And if I didn't have someone to call or talk to or something to learn or, a bank to ring and ask about policy, and I was getting all their policies and I was like, well, I'll create a spreadsheet of the best policies for self-employed people, like I was creating the whole time. And I think that the thing was I couldn't work out how people who were creating a business weren't that into it. I was like, how are you making excuses for yourself
And
by,
Jessica, can I
turning
just
up
ask
each.
you something there? Do you think it's something to do with your passion for what you were doing was so big that it pulled you,
Mm,
and that the flow was there versus somebody who was perhaps starting a business to escape something that they didn't want to do? What do you think the
yeah,
magic was with you?
yeah. So it's an interesting insight because yes, a lot of people were redundant or it was, why I don't like the old job, I'm going to create something new. And I definitely had a calling to why I was doing something. I didn't know what or how I was going to get there. I could see what I wanted to create. And I was audacious as well. I remember ringing up one of the biggest property investing groups, the Defence Housing Australia in Australia, and said, "Oh, I'm a mortgage broker and I'd love, speak to your people." And they said, "We get 3 to 5 mortgage brokers a day." And I said, "But I bet you they don't have these skills. How about we run workshops in mining towns, in remote areas? I'll fly in and speak. I have one of your properties, but I'm going to be really honest and say about the downfalls of it. But I could then speak to them and you could come and showcase what you've got and they get property education, authentic information, and we could do roadshows." And no one's ever pitched this. And I was thinking on my feet. It's like, how do I make myself unique? What do I have that's different to everyone else? And so I wouldn't take a no. And I was also looking at improvements. Like I was told, if you look after a little geographic area or maybe your town or city, and you have to be there at convenient times for them. So you drive an hour and a half and you sit around at someone's dining room table after dinner, you bring the Tim Tams and you talk about mortgages. Well, that wasn't me. I was into efficiency. I wanted to speak to all Australians who wanted to create wealth through a strategic, low risk way for property investing. I wanted the mums and dads to have 2 properties, maybe one renovation, and $1 million in the bank in 10 years' time. Like that was my goal. And so
Jen,
I,
sorry, can I just, there's so much to unpack. There's so much amazing information in here. But this one thing is, I heard you say, I didn't really know, I didn't have the big vision. I didn't know where this was going. Now, this is so interesting because you are moving on this grand scale uh, into a direction that you didn't really know it was going. Can you talk me through that? How did you know what next step to take with not really having a clear picture?
well, I had a very clear picture of the outcome. I was going to have a very successful mortgage broking business that was the go-to for property investors who wanted to have a safe and secure way that was research driven because I have a very strong research engineering kind of methodology, but to protect their nest egg. Like I felt deep responsibility that might have had 40, $50,000. That's all they had, and they're making an investment in a property. I couldn't give advice, but I could sit there very clearly going, isn't that interesting? You're looking at this property. Did you notice next door that this was going on? And in this area, this is going on. What do you think the outcome of that would be? So I could do property coaching basically without doing property coaching, and it still gave me the integrity of having insurance to protect my portfolio and my family give give as well. And so although I had the vision of what I wanted to create, I didn't know the steps, but I knew what I didn't like. I'm not going to be turning up and driving around at night, and Tim Tams, giving Tim Tams to people in houses I don't know. I'd have a conversation with people on the phone. And, before Zoom became a thing with COVID, one of the biggest banks in Australia said to me, we've just found out that you're not doing a face-to-face meeting with people. This is after 15 years. And I was like, right. And they said, so we can't let you write mortgages anymore unless you have a face-to-face meeting. And luckily enough, most of their products and the benefits and features of their products other banks had, but they had some key policies that were extraordinary. And I was not going to rob my clients of the ability to be in what I felt was an appropriate right loan for them. And so I flew to Sydney. I had 5 clients. I bought my own chocolates, not Tim Tams. It was Christmas time. I went and took selfies with them all to prove that I was face to face. I had a taxi waiting outside, driving me around, drove me back to the airport, and submitted all the loans. So, I couldn't be held back, but what was right for my clients was always front of mind for me. And a lot of the times people would come and say, I want this loan, I want to do this. And I'd just say, look, I'm not the mortgage broker for you. This is going to completely put you and your family in so much financial stress. I need you to understand this. And some of them would thank me, and some would say, any other mortgage broker would write this. I'm like, do you want me to give you a name of someone that
But
I could recommend?
it was integrity and this big vision of what you wanted, uh, that held you and everybody else so accountable to that. Now, Jane, moving forward,
Hmm.
you've created a hugely successful business in this, helped so many people, changed people's lives. That vision came through. So what was it that made you then go, okay, I'm done with this. I need to, because for most people, achieving that in a lifetime would be unbelievable, but not for Jane.
Well, it's interesting because 2009 and 2011, I won Australia's Mortgage Broker of the Year. And the following year, they've got, you've got to, put in an application for this again. And I was like, no, I think I've done that,
Mm.
but let someone else have a go. This is great. So I've always, I guess, even with the mining, with the Churchill Fellowship, I've always kind of had the opportunity and been recognized for it. And then gone, this is enough. And it's funny because I've taught people how to do things and they've stuck to it. We only bought properties between 2001 2006. We could have kept buying, we could have, I don't know, who knows. But for me, that was enough. Whereas, people who have followed my things and that's all they've done, they've got these 20, $30 million property portfolios. I was like, whoa, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Or
Yeah.
they've had these significant health challenges or divorce and they've gone, thank God we could sell some of the properties, our life goes on. And for me, that's amazing. But I still have investors' choice mortgages. Yesterday, I wrote an app in AI because I'd heard something on the news where people were worried about should I fix my interest rate or not. So I created an app where they can run a scenario to see if it is good or not. And it's just a free tool that anyone can use.
But there's
So,
this enormous level of curiosity, with this phenomenal ability to, uh, put things into AI, particularly now, and help people and see things. And the most efficient way
mhm.
is an extraordinary skill, Jane, that you've helped so many people.
Well,
Amazing.
I got to the stage in 2011 where I thought, look, I'm really I guess I'm gatekeeping people from my knowledge by making them have to do a mortgage with me so that I've got some protection. And so I went overseas. I started mentoring with an online education expert. Came back, with someone who'd been into one of my courses who happened to have knowledge in digital marketing, loved as much as me, loved property as much as me, and was flipping properties. Said. And was a videographer, said, let's come up with a course together. It'll be easy. We did like 150 hours of filming for the Ultimate Guide to Renovation. We launched that. So I had a whole education business. And, I was teaching people how to do it. The courses were half the price of everything else on the market. They made a lot more money than we did. We were really, tens of thousands of people went through the courses and I still get letters today from people going, this changed our lives. And so I knew that I was bringing even more of an impact with that education space. But it got to a point where I could see some people just I'd teach them how to get from 16,500 suburbs down to three suburbs using census data down to the streets that the renters want to live in to de-risk, de-risk, de-risk. Look at the capital growth opportunities, compare renovated, unrenovated. There was capacity to make $2 for every $1. All of these kind of like little basic criteria that I had of how to make money in property strategically and low risk. And people they do all the research and then they go, oh, I just bought a unit off the plan. Oh God, what have you done? And so I thought, okay, I need to work out why people are falling off this like protocol. And so, the courses that we created were doing weekly check-ins. We would only release one module at a time, which was upsetting people. Oh, thank God you made me do the gold module. I've got 7 properties, but I realize I've been doing it wrong. And, so I really kind of was really always trying to make the best thing I could for the better for everyone. And then I thought, okay, that's it. I'm going to do mentoring. I'm going to do, this kind of one-on-one mentoring. I'm going to get people set up with their suburbs. I'm going to bring together, a lot of the methodologies, give them all my education, correct them when they go wrong. And there was this one lady in particular, and I laughed because I just got an email from her, like in the last month, talking about her success. But we'd got down to these suburbs. I'd set up these alerts for her. As the properties came up, I'd assess them for her. She could then go and negotiate or get someone to negotiate and buy them for her. And finally, this perfect property had come up. And I was like, let's go. And she's like, it doesn't feel right. And I was shocked. I was like, how can this not feel right? And she said, no, I just don't think it's the right time. And I was literally, we had worked. She spent a lot of money as me as a one-on-one mentor. We'd worked so far. I'm outcome driven. I wouldn't take people's money unless I could see a 10x benefit for them. Like I could see the path for her. And I knew what she was creating for herself and her son. And like, it just bamboozled me. And so it made me stop. And I asked this question, which was, is there anywhere else in your life that it doesn't feel like the right time? And she said, well, I've just been offered my dream job, but yeah. And I was like, there's something here. What is this? Why is she getting in the way of her own success? And I then went down and, I listened to Tony Robbins when I was 20 and read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which changed my life. And, I'd been into that self-development. But I took a risk and I bought a ticket to Mind Valley University in Estonia. I took my 10-year-old son, my husband stayed home and looked after the budgie. And I was just open up to all of these different modalities. And there was people there who were escaping things and had their own stuff going on. But there were some really insightful, interesting people. And I remember walking down this beautiful little historic town of Tallinn with this lady who was a very successful lady from Singapore. And she was saying how she used intuition for a lot of her business decisions. And I'm like, well, how do I learn that? And she's like, just do it. It's like, no, that doesn't, I'm a scientist. I need to pull it apart. I
Give me
need to.
best practice. I need to know the best way of doing it, the most
No,
efficient
I don't
of
just tell
using
me
my
to do
intuition.
it. Exactly. So let me make a science of intuition here. And so I found Joe Dispenza, and he did the science-backed, integrity research-backed information around epigenetics and manifestation, to other words. And I thought, oh, there's something in this. And then I found William Whitecloud in 2020, and he went into the intuition piece further. I started mentoring with him, and I remember saying to him, William, how do I learn intuition? Because I was like, there's some gut thing that stops people. There's something that's people. How could you override that with this intuitive kind of knowing, or, this is right or this is wrong? Like, how do you develop a skill set around this? And William said to me, just do it. I was like, nope. Like, I'm paying you a lot of money to give me some advice. Give me some action. And he essentially said, when you go step outside your house every day to walk to work or go on your walk, do an intuitive walk. Every time you get to a corner, go left or right. You want to get to the coffee shop, but which way are you going to go? And, in Melbourne, we had like 250 days of lockdown and you're allowed out 1 to 2 hours a day. And I did intuitive walking every day and I'd go and see the most interesting things. I'd set an intention to see the extraordinary in the ordinary because I could only go about 2 kilometers. And I was seeing something new and unusual every day. And I was just taking little photos just on my phone. And I remember, like a shadow or something that me, or the flower or a raindrop on a leaf or whatever. And I'd just be throwing them up on Facebook, like, went for a walk. And about 100 of them I put on that free Unsplash platform. And about a year later, 3 people in 1 week. One guy, I was a shovel operator on a mine site I was doing a mortgage for. Another guy had been coaching in digital marketing, and another guy was from the natural success community. And they all said, we don't like or comment on Facebook, but your photos got us through a really hard mental health situation we're in. I thought, isn't that interesting? And so I went to that Unsplash website to have a look at my photos, and it said like 30,000 people had looked at 500 downloads. And I was like, imagine affecting the lives of 30,000 people.
With an
And
image.
then I realized that that was for the month, and it was 1 million people and 10,000 downloads.
And
And
so
now it's 3 million people.
wow. So at this stage, right? So intuition, suddenly Curious Jane went, what is this intuition? I've done that, seen it.
How can I hack
How,
it?
and now how can I hack intuition? So you were going on these intuitive walks.
Mm.
At what stage did you go, yeah, I'm just going to do it. It's innate in me and I'm just going to follow it. Yeah, at
All
what
I was
stage did
doing,
that
every
happen?
single decision, I was telling my subconscious, I'm following you. You're telling me to go left or right. I'm listening. All I was saying is, I'm listening, I'm listening, I'm listening. And it started serving me up more information. Here's a business opportunity. Here's a course you should do. Like, I've just done a course in the last year, and I heard this person, and it was on AI. And, I've been mentored by some of, the best in AI business for the last 4 or 5 years. And, I'm a finalist in the inaugural Australian AI Awards. Like, I don't just learn it, I do it. And I heard this guy speaking. I went to his website, and his website was around, ethical AI, but also the rise of the human spirit and how you can channel on this divine spark. And I was like, I do not want to talk to dead people. I am not doing channeling. I'm out of here. And absolute intuitive hit going, you have to do this course. This is going to affect humanity in the big picture of what's to come. I
And
was
Jane,
like,
sorry, can I just ask, when you listen to intuition, I know you started on very low stake stuff, literally walking, which way do I go? Then got the feedback from all these amazing people whose lives had been changed because of these images. And then you could, I guess, feel as though it was trustworthy enough to then make bigger decisions, like I'm going to spend X amount on that course or make that decision. Is that the process, how it worked for you? So there was trust in it before the bigger stakes stuff happened.
I just believed that the information that I was getting, and higher consciousness, God, source, universe, Gus, whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
But, I was connecting into something much higher. And the work that I'd done in the natural success community had taken me to a level of understanding that I had an intuitive, we all do. I had developed an intuitive gift. I had for 10 years been doing vision calls with clients about stepping into their future lives and seeing that life with them and taking them through it. And now I realized that I was intuitively picking up on some of this information, and they'd come back to me and go, you're not going to believe it. This thing did happen, or this happened sooner. And so I had been, I guess, putting this into like your financial vision call, but I was doing a lot of the work innately anyhow. And all I was doing is formalizing the education of my subconscious to let me know that I was listening and to let it know that it could serve me up more information because I was ready to hear it.
Very interesting. And I think something that came up was trust, just knowing. And then the other thing is practice, doing it every, allowing that intuition to know that it was being followed, and then it was serving up more and more trust. And so the cycle goes on and on. So for somebody who's kind of new to intuition like you were, and wanted the hack and the how do I do this? What would you say to that person?
I would just do that intuitive walk. Walk, even, work. It's like, shall I take the lift or the stairs? Shall I have coffee now or later? Should I, you know, pardon me, should I go to this coffee shop or that coffee shop? You know, just just asking the question and sitting and seeing if there's a knowing. It's just like well, this is an obvious way to do it. Sometimes I get to a corner and it's just like, nah, it's not going to make a difference to your experience in life, left or right. It's okay, but mostly I will get something or see something that delights me or creates awe or wonder or an opportunity for kindness or a smile that I may have missed otherwise.
So it's not
I just have that gratitude of having had that experience.
So it's not huge things. Sometimes, as you said, it's seeing something beautiful with awe and wonder, or seeing a smile, or being able to give a smile. And the other question I want to ask is, when you first started, these intuitive walks, how did you know that intuition was talking to you? Was it something you felt in your body,
Mm.
or was it just a knowing? And I know it's different for everybody, but I'm
Mm.
just interested to see how it worked for
But for
you.
me, it was just a knowing. It was just oh, well, this is the obvious choice. And going back to that lady, I brought that lady with me and my entire mentoring cohort at the time onto the natural success work. And people were having profound breakthroughs and understanding. And what I learned was, not just is intuition, this is this lovely tool, but there's things that we have created that we have to overcome or we have to address or be aware of. And I realized that we had these conditions or these beliefs or these limitations or this societal norms or cultural norms or mum said this or I have to wait for permission. Whatever those stories were, I realized that we were all layered with these. And then I then, I guess, developed the gift or saw the gift that I had in seeing what these layers were that people had. And I could just see almost the fact that people were bound by um, an unspoken shackle often. And, they'd be dating the same wrong person, or they'd always be scammed by real estate agents, or they'd make money and lose it, or the other guy always got the job. And all of a sudden, it went more than property investing. It went to, well, this is how we're doing life.
Mm.
And then, being the engineer scientist, I was like, okay, how do I put some science behind this? So, a very well-known, famous neuroscientist, biologist had been given my name. She's based in Vienna. She's like, I just have to have you at my retreat. I need, you know, innovative things to be there. And she invited me to this retreat. And without a care in the world, I basically said to my husband and my son, I'm off to a retreat. And off to Bali, I went for the first time. And I sat there and I learned about the neuroscience of how we create everything and how intention and even intuition, but how our biology, how we can hack our biology to be now parasympathetic and how we can, with breath and just, hydrate and good food, we can change everything. So I was about optimizing success. So then I brought in those factors into, well, what is holding people back? I can't have something because of. And we are very much in this society of have, do, be. If I have this degree, this job, this career, this wife, this husband, house, this car, then at some stage in the future, when I get through all the doing, I can be happy, be fulfilled, be retired, whatever that is. And I wanted to flip that. I wanted to understand how could I just be whole, be happy, be me, be now, not ask for permission, not ask for validation. How could all of the constraints of the matrix I've grown up in, the bars, how can I reduce those? And when I realized the bars, I'd put those prison bars there myself. And I was the one keeping myself locked away. It wasn't anyone else. I then realized that I had the opportunity, as I then lead, my clients through, the opportunity to create what they want. And I think just that I thought I had to learn more, I had to do more, I had to have more to have this awakening and this enlightenment. But what I learned was I had to lose more and shed more and get rid of all the stuff and remember who I was in the beginning. And that second kind of significant stone in my shoe for me was, it's not about creating wealth, although I have tools to show people how to do that with business and career and property. Sometimes that's a limitation. It's too great for people to get over. I'm like, okay, let's just get it out of the way. We can do that with some AI and some really cool things here. Let's just do that and park it. Now, who can you be? Like, what could you be if you were fully expressed, if you didn't have to ask your dad for permission, or you didn't have to be the good girl, or you didn't have to, live with this expectation that you had to serve others first? Like, what would life look like? What if you were God within? What if you were living heaven now? What if you were the predominant creative force in your life? What if it was infinitely possible for you to do anything? What would that look like?
Wow. So that's taking the education and the mortgage broking to the next level. One is a tool to build wealth. The other is to build a life that you love, one that you're curating, one that you are the predominant creative force in. Now, and this talks to me because I love this stuff, but how did that, because a lot of people could come into a course of creating wealth. I can see that it's a piece of the pie, I understand.
Yeah.
But coming in and selling this, not piece of the pie, but the whole pie, the whole gorgeous pie of having a life that you love, how do people react to that? And how do you, yeah, just talk me through that. That's so
Yeah,
fascinating.
it's so difficult to vocalize because there might be people who are sitting there with what I call the success paradox. They've got financially, wealth-wise, all the doodads, the career, the position, but they're feeling empty. They're like, how can I have it all but have nothing?
Mm.
Or there's someone who's sitting there who's just got this quiet disquiet. They're like, I should be grateful. I've got like, everything going on for me. Like I've got my health, I've got my kids, I've got my family. We have an overseas trip once every 3 years. There's no major big things going on. I not feel okay. And I think there is the global inhumanity at the moment, an awareness of this unease. And some people calling it the big awakening. And, you could go really woo, and I'm not against woo. Woo is just the window of opportunity. And the wow of what science and medicine was the woo of 100 years ago. So I'm happy to think that, it's just a timing issue. But there's all of these things going on, and people, we've been through pandemic, we're going through wars, we're supposed to take a side on one thing or the other, and it's like good or bad, but you look at the sides and you're like, I can see how they think they're good, I can see how these think they're good. Like it's hard in all of the noise that we have today. And I think people are just exhausted by it. And then there's AI. It's like, how do I keep up with it all? And, there's all of this tension. And I just look at it and go, tell me what holds you back. Tell me what is the condition that if collapsed, you could have everything. And I can pull from, um, you know, vision setting, I can pull from investing, I can pull from biohacking, I can pull from neuroscience, I can pull together an AI tool that will people go, I just can't get the marketing for my business done. It takes hours and months. I'm like, what if I created an app with you and we just got rid of that problem so that you could have all the content in your voice to your avatar, speaking exactly how you would like to turn up, but without the effort. Can we do that? And so they're like, yes. So if we collapse that condition, I can then have the bigger conversation that says, what if you went God mode? What if there is no conditions? And we used AI as just as a vehicle or a tool to show you could collapse things that you didn't think was possible. What now could you achieve? What does life look like? What's a legacy you want to leave? What's the impact you want to have just for your family or your community or humanity? Like,
So these are huge questions. These are questions that a lot of people feel kind of overwhelmed by sometimes. And um, it's so big, it's almost too big, so I'm not going to start. So for somebody who, uh, all those ladies you were talking about, the stone in their shoe, what advice would you, if just in a few sentences, what advice would you do if they're at the beginning of this journey? There's this unease, they want to find out more, they want to create this life, and perhaps some of them feel, that they've got everything, but for them, more joy, more peace, more, because sometimes we limit ourselves as well. So I'm sorry, I'm going on a bit, but what advice would
Yeah.
you give those women?
Well, it's going to be big, and it's where you feel the tension of, oh, I don't think I could do that. So for some people, they might be very, very bold, but they don't sit in silence easily. So your one bold move a day might be to sit and just breathe for 10 minutes. And for others who are kind of pretty chill, their bold move might be asking for a discount at the coffee shop, or, you know, going up to someone that they haven't spoken to before in a crowded room and starting the conversation.
So
So it's going to be different.
is this taking you out of your comfort zone?
It is. And it's finding where the tension spot is, because usually where you feel some tension to create action, you're going to find your biggest breakthroughs. So I don't mean go and buy an investment property, or, go and give up your job, or, go and take on the next AI course and build an app. Those big, brave moves are potentially in your future. But it's about feeling that uncomfortableness and going, I'm going to listen to this. Like, there is an unease in me. There is a dis-ease in me. And before it manifests into some physical thing that tells me to slow down or whatever, I want to acknowledge this and give it an awareness that allows it to come forward, and so that I can explore it with curiosity, with permission to fail, with the ability to just say, I don't know where this is going to take me, but it feels like the life I'm living at the moment may not be the true, authentic person I could be. And I want to explore that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And if you could, and I know this is really hard because there's so much you've given us today, so much food for thought, so many lessons, so many layers for what you're saying. And what blows me away as well is that every step of the way was required for the next one, that nothing is a mistake. It's all perfectly done in the perfect order to bring. It's just, I think you've collapsed time by going through so many people might just do one in a lifetime, whereas you've done so many. So that's really interesting. But if you just had to summarize everything that we've talked about into a sentence or a word, and I know this is a really hard one, what would it be, a key takeaway for the person listening?
It would be explore what your heart's desire is and pursue it with absolute certainty and belief that that is your path.
That's beautiful. And Jane, we'd love to hear more about you. How can people get in contact with you? I will link everything below, but how could they get in contact with you if they feel aligned to do that?
Look, yoursuccessclub.com.au, my podcast, Exit the Matrix, Google me, you'll find something. It may be in an area that you think, no, that's not interesting, but pursue it, because you never know. It could lead you down a path of something new.
Jane, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your energy and all your courage. I feel so inspired. I kind of feel I need to go and do an intuitive walk and just see what happens.
Well, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
gift of being here with you.
Thank you.